So welcome everyone. I see people are coming over. We are at around, say, 20 participants right now, 28 to be precise. So I see my colleague Andrei Litiu is already dropping some message on our chat box. So of course, feel free to drop any comments in the Q&A box and use the chat box for all the non-related content exchange. So again, for any reason, don't hesitate to ask questions and try to address this during our final Q&A session. I think we can start. In the meantime, people will start coming over. I introduce myself. My name is Simona D'Oca. I am the E-DYCE project coordinator. I work at Huygen Consulting Engineer in the Netherlands. I'm here with several colleagues from the E-DYCE team. First off, again, I would like to thank Andrei Litiu from Riva for the technical organization. So it was very efficient and very well organized. And here with me some colleagues from the Institute for Innovation and Development of the University of Ljubljana. They will chair. Hi, Jure and Domen, that will chair the Q&A session with a small introduction, well, substantial introduction to something we have been working on at the E-DYCE project related to, this user-centered approach that will support somehow the topic of discussion for today web workshop. Together with our colleagues from our sister projects, from our Horizon 2020 sister project. This is more or less our program for today. Of course, we'll try to keep it flexible, but this is how we'd like to structure it for this 1 hour 30 journey we have together. We'd like to introduce very briefly the E-DYCE project, but this is more like the general overview of the objective of these sister projects for this common debate. The first slot will be dedicated to a keynote presentation from our colleague from the European Consumer Organization, Guillaume Joly, is a sustainability officer from the BEUC. And that will be followed by an interesting presentation from our colleagues from the Institute of Innovation and Development of the University of Ljubljana, Domen Bančič Jure Vetršek, related to the perception about the energy performance certificate schemes in some selected European country, having this user perspective, the usability perspective in mind. We will move then to a moderated panel discussion together with our colleagues from our sister projects. So representing the QualDeEPC, X-tendo, ePANACEA, ePBC RECAST, D2EPC, and E-DYCE projects. So we'll have a spotlight on this next generation of energy performance certificate with this user perspective in mind. So our colleagues will give like this short but in-depth presentation of the, like a snapshot of these projects, so that we will arise some, common point of discussion and reflection with this perspective in mind. So like we were publicizing this on our LinkedIn post, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. So that's really our mantra for today's discussion. Okay. So I'll try to wrap up everything around 1:30, but of course there will be possibility to keep this conversation open by sharing our contacts. So that's our, virtual digital networking session for these weird times that keep us seated in our living rooms instead of being together. All right, so that's the program. Of course, if you have questions, just drop a comment on the chat box. Next slide. Okay, thanks. So this is a very short, like a snapshot introduction to the UCERT project. UCERT is a Horizon 2020 coordination and support action that started 18 months ago. So we are right in the middle of our technical and financial reporting phase. So we can really say we are in the middle of the development. The objective of UCERT is to introduce a new generation of the user-centered energy performance assessment and certification scheme, trying to bring about value to this energy performance certificates in a holistic and cost-effective manner. We are lucky to have a bunch of definitely experts in the field in our consortium, represented, for instance, by the EPB Center from BRIVA and from several members that are supporting the EPB standards spread and coverage in several countries. And we are following this approach under the M48 480 mandate, which is a mandate from the European Commission to deliver to the EPB Center representing national and regional choices on a comparative basis. So this is probably one of our biggest chunk of work that has been developed so far. A big achievement also within UCERT was the support of the testing phase and the validation phase of the Smart Readiness Indicator, so the SRI. So we have 11 countries, and we use our pilots in these 11 countries to validate the approach from the developed from the Commission with the SRI. So that's also a big part of the work developed so far. And more in general, the work that has been supported and advocated by the group of let's say ethnographers and social scientists is supported indeed by the IRI-Ljubljana team, is to encourage and to support this end user decision making. So we try to define a holistic picture of the different stakeholders using and developing energy performance certificates, trying to understand which were the usability barriers from these different perspectives. So we are very happy to be here and to discuss and to share this lesson learned with the other projects, because we are sure that some of the key outcomes, key highlights, but also the key bottlenecks that we found could be discussed with the sister projects and sharing these lessons. So this is more or less the presentation of the USO project. We will have more time to discuss about this, but I don't want to take too much time for this introduction. I would rather leave the stage to my colleagues, and specifically to Guillaume, Joly, with his keynote presentation, how to make green and healthy housing affordable for consumers, focusing on EPB energy performance certificates. So without any further ado, I'm glad to hand over the stage to Guillaume Joly. So enjoy the keynotes presentation.
Thanks, Simona. Hi, everyone. So as mentioned, I'm Guillaume Joly, working for BEUC, the European Consumer Organization. And my presentation, does that work? Let me try. There is a discrepancy in the presentation. So BEUC is the European consumer organization working on energy for quite a long time, but more centered on consumers' rights. It will, voilà. Sorry for the delay. Here we are. BEUC works on the consumers' rights for more than a decade now regarding energy, and is broadening its scope to the residential sector and the retrofit. Sorry, Andre, I think I'm gonna have to ask you to go to the next slide. I couldn't take over the control. Thanks. We are working at BEUC for consumers protection and on a new work stream on the residential retrofit and energy efficiency, and on the decarbonization of heating and cooling. We mainly work within the renovation wave impulse and under the Fit for 55 strategy objective of the Energy Efficiency Directive and the EPBD revision within 2021. Just to remind that those tools, the energy performance certificates, have been around for a while with consumers, because they originated in 2002 in the EPBD. So that we are allowed at BEUC as the umbrella consumer organization to give you some feedback from our members based on facts. Just as a key point here, BEUC would like to support the idea that EPCs should be designed as a marketing tool. That would be the key definition of EPCs, and they should fit in from A to Z advice and support service to consumers. EPCs should not be seen as a standalone tool, but really as part of a broader scope. Next, please. So to start with, general observation from BEUC members, consumers are confused by contradictory, incomplete, and biased advice. They need an easy access to information, and here the quality of the advice is key. Consumers' relative lack of awareness should be tackled in a consistent and timely manner. So consumers need the information at the proper time to influence their decision making. And as identified in the EPBD, the consumers the most in need of information on energy performance and its cost are prospective buyers and prospective tenants. And from what we've heard from our members, the implementation at the national level is quite diverse regarding the EPCs. Cost, accreditation of assessors and their skills, the required one, are diverse, and the adaptation to consumers' profile is also sometimes questionable, as I will explain. So to conclude this introduction, if EPCs have been of some use, the general observation from our members is that their reliability needs to be improved. How to do that? We're gonna see consumers have some thoughts on that. Next, please. Some examples from our members, starting with our UK member Citizens Advice. Citizens Advice study highlights the inconsistencies of EPCs as they can vary significantly. A research on past schemes found that different assessors gave the same property a significantly different EPC rating. This undermines their key purpose, the purpose of EPCs to help consumers to understand and make decisions to improve their performance, the performance of their homes, as they don't trust the tool, basically. It also creates knock-on problems for policies that use EPC ratings, for example, as qualifying criteria or as benchmark of success. As they are unreliable, policymakers can't really rely on this tool to build their programs and policies. Next, please. Observations now from our Portuguese member, DECO. EPCs are too technical and too complicated to be easily understood by households. EPCs can also be inaccurate. The example given during one of our workshops was an EPC for tenants in a multi-unit building, and the tenants were suggested to install exterior insulation. So to the flat, which means that was not really accurate, when at the same time the windows were single glazing and they didn't have any recommendation linked to them, so no double glazing, where in terms of improvement works, it's something both achievable and easily implemented, more than exterior insulation to only one flat. So what our member in Portugal concludes is that EPCs do not properly factor in each household situation, be the households in houses, in multi-unit buildings, be them tenants or owner-occupiers or landlords, by the way. Next, please. Actually, some good feedback from our Portuguese member on the design of the EPCs in Portugal, because this design includes symbols, logos, and pictograms, which make it easy to grasp from the different consumers. It's clear, simple, direct. So that's somehow best practice here. Next, please. Observations from our Austrian member now, Arbeiterkammer Wien. The feedback they gave us was that the information can be misleading for multi-unit buildings. Here again, with a common external energy supply, for example, district heating, or both space and water heating, the information is unclear. This is especially true for water heating during summer months, where the influence of district heating is not accurately factored in. So the EPC does not reflect real consumption, so and the estimation is not accurate. EPCs only consider central heating in multi-unit buildings, so the individual heating is poorly estimated here again. It's quite concerning because district heating is meant to expand in the EU at a quite broad scale. So refining and fine-tuning the information given to consumers and the decision makers is here essential. Next slide, please. Feedback from our French member now, UFC Que Choisir. Assessors, their training and professionalism are the key factor that explains EPC's inconsistencies. It's not really the software used in the EPC per se. Software can be correct, but if the input is not thorough and professionally issued, then it's complicated to have any reliability. And here again, trust is not. Consumers' trust is not something you can observe. A study from 2017 on 7 homes and 34 EPCs concluded that none of the homes received 2 consistent EPCs. The prices themselves vary from 90 euros to 270 without indication of improved reliability. It's not because you pay more that it's more reliable. It's just that you are less aware of the prices than another consumer. Bribes were also observed when EPCs are conditioned to access a specific loan, for example, the 0 interest rate loan provided by the government. So basically, households just give a bribe to the assessor to get the rating they need to access the loan. Next, please. Still in France, from UFC Que Choisir, a law voted in November of 2018 will come into force in July 2021 and make the EPCs legally opposable. That means that the assessor's responsibility can then be engaged. For example, from the bribe situation I mentioned, the example, there is a control, and it turns out that the EPC is not accurate, and that the real rating finally does not allow the access to the zero interest loan. So the consumers, the households, lose the benefits of it. Then the assessor is responsible, and although I don't have the details of how that will be implemented, I think it's an interesting start regarding accountability and liability with EPCs. UFC Que Choisir is also supportive of new technical measures to improve the reliability of EPCs, improve training and tighter accreditation of assessors, and reinforcing the controls. Next, please. What do consumers actually expect as advice? Consumers undertake a retrofit project to improve their comfort, which is linked to healthy living conditions. Energy savings are a key component too, but might not be the main trigger yet. Regarding health, a clear indication on summer comfort and dampness management and ventilation are needed. Clear point of improvement of the methodology here, perhaps also the software. That might be something colleagues will address later. So it is also important to keep in mind that consumers have different profiles. Prospective buyers want to know how much they would have to invest to make the property efficient, and they should be allowed to compare one property to another, hence the dimension of marketing. Prospective tenants want to know whether the flat or the home they intend to rent will cost a lot for the bills, the energy bills, or which improvements could be forked off for their landlord to be involved so that they can enter in a discussion with the landlord. Next, please. What EPCs are and what they should not become. It should become mandatory for EPCs to include two options that combine technical and financial aspects for EPCs to be useful to different budget capacities. What we have in mind here are the low-income households. So BEUC calls for financial support for grants for financial instruments to be implemented to support low income, but we are not still there yet. So BEUC suggests to have a first option in the EPC that is a no-brainer, where the return on investment is guaranteed in the short term. Budget is kept low and the project covers 2 to 3 main items, but it has to stay and remain compatible with an incremental logic to achieve higher performance at a later step once the financial tools will be available, for example. The second option is a more ambitious one directly, where projected efficiency gains are higher, but so are the costs, with a full retrofit undertaken. So two options will be clearer for consumers to have. Next, please. So perhaps I can be quick here. EPCs should not be compared to energy audits. They are lighter, not as expensive, and can't be as accurate. To illustrate, that we compare with a hiking. EPCs are the short high description in terms of the level of difficulty, length, and average timing, and energy audits are the full topographic map linked to a roadmap that provides step-by-step guidance on the road to follow, its intersections, elevation, and landmarks. EPCs are meant to remain marketing tools, once again, and should not be considered as substitutes to energy audits. Improving the reliability and content of EPCs does not and should not have to mean more technical content and not significantly higher prices. The cost should remain low. Next, please. And I'm almost finished. So key recommendations from the Sustainable Housing Position paper, which you will have on the next slide linked to. So energy performance certificates should be less technical, easier to read and display more practical information for consumers and installers. EPCs should be edited, formatted, laid out, and disclosed in such a way that consumers can easily understand and act upon them in a well-informed and timely manner. EPCs should integrate information from the local market to become more accurate and more consistent so that consumers can have objective comparison ground. Average cost of works, for example, from the database, from the registry, that should become mandatory, or from the one-stop shops. Consumers should be able to compare performance and average cost based on local conditions of two different scenarios. That's the point I made earlier. And I will stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you very much. This was a very interesting perspective, let's say more consumer-oriented. I'd like to hand over the stage to my two colleagues from the Institute of Innovation and Development of the University of Ljubljana, Domen and Jure, with an introductory presentation about the perception of EPC schemes in some of the European selected countries, work that has been developed within the UCERT project, and then we will hand over to the Q&A session. So, Domen and Jure, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Simona, and hello to everyone. Domen here from Ljubljana, and I'll try to give a brief introduction into UCERT as a case, and also make basically the case of why we think it's important to think about the people and to work with the people and to find solutions for the people together with them. And this is basically what IRI in Ljubljana is all about. And this is also one of the core principles of what UCERT is all about. And we want that all the other projects also at least keep that in mind in the following work. So now, just briefly, we'll first go through the concept of people-centered development, which we practice. Then take a look at UCERT as a short case of ethnographic approach, and look at some key takeaways before going to the discussion and next steps. Just a brief introduction and why anthropology and ethnography are important. Anthropology is basically a discipline that wants to understand people deeply, and it's a comparative study of people and societies. And ethnography is basically its tools and its principles, so understanding people from their point of view. And this is best reflected in UCERT's objective number 2, so enhancement of the certification schemes to be more practical, reliable, understandable, and most importantly, user-centered, so basically people to the fourth. And as I said, this has been from the beginning already IRI's agenda, hidden agenda, I say. So, for example, in terms of energy consumption, we have to think about people using energy rather than buildings as themselves consuming energy. And that's a very important turn in perspective. Basically, the method that we're using, or the principle, is the people-centered development approach. Probably a lot of you have already seen this scheme. So identification, analysis, interpretation, and testing. So the first 2 stages are often left out. We try to at least keep that in mind throughout our research, and always going back to the field, talking to the people, already doing it before we actually start making big developments. And to show you an example of what we have been doing, at IRI, we'll obviously focus now on UCERT. So in UCERT, a lot of work has already been done. And here you have the most important points. So the applied ethnographic research in interdisciplinary environments, so architects, engineers, anthropologists working together. We made a special tailored research method and analysis for deeper understanding of users' perceptions of EPC schemes, and then identified and categorized the results for goal-oriented developments of prospective user solutions. And it's important to give you a bit of a, let's say, an example to understand why we think it's important that we talk to people, that we keep in touch with the real world, and that we understand them. So in UCERT, in pursuit of deep understanding of EPC schemes, we went to the field and talked to, on the one side, experts, which are the people, let's say, who have deep understanding of the system, of the EPC scheme and certification. And on the other side, we talk to, let's say, general users, usual people who own houses, use houses, and so on, and don't necessarily have this deep insight into how EPCs work and how they should work, and so on. In between, let's say, we have expert users as well, who are users who have background knowledge, but not necessarily so in-depth knowledge of how the system works and why it's important. So we try to cover the whole spectrum. And in fact, we talked with quite a lot of people, so 191 in total by our counting. I'm sure there were more, but officially this is the number in 11 different countries. A lot of them were experts in the field, so 88, and more than 100 are basically users, so experts or general users. We did semi-structured interviews and we did focus groups, which are basically just different methods of trying to interact with the people. And now we'll go through a couple of examples of what we encounter in the field, because we think it's important to have a bit of an idea to understand why it's important to talk to the people. So for example, when we went to the field and talked with the experts, we posed questions, of course. And one of the questions, the core question was how to make EPCs more user-friendly, more useful for the people, because this is the core of UCERT. And the responses were very mixed and very interesting as well. So let's say a scheme and guideline developer said, the practical value is for project developers, okay? Not for the users. This is the purpose. Who makes buildings? It's not the users. That's my perspective. On the other side, we had an EPC issuer who said, tell me, how often do you look at an ID card, except when someone requires you to? The EPC is really just an ID or doctor's certificate for a building. You look at it when you have to, one that has to, not others. Then we went on and to talk to other experts as well. For example, scheme and guideline developers. And we asked, let's say, a more general question. How could we make the existing EPC better? And we got a very interesting response, let's say once, like, I mean, it's a shame, look, why are you opening a topic that is 10 years old in the first place? And obviously we then went on to speak to other people, like expert users, people who have the knowledge background, let's say, to understand technical viewpoints, but not necessarily focus so much on the deep system of EPC schemes and why they're important. And we posed the question, what's your experience with EPCs? Are they useful? Do you understand them? And so on. And the answers were, let's say, from a building manager, our EPC, the story goes like so. We have had one made because we had to. We've put it up at the reception on a visible spot, and here the story ends. Sincerely speaking, it has no functional value. And another response in direction of understanding or comprehensiveness from a facility manager at a municipality. As far as comprehensiveness of EPCs is concerned, individuals do not understand them. And even I'm from the expertise. I don't really understand them. And then we went on to talk to general users, people who own buildings, buy buildings, use buildings, and so on. We made focus groups. We made interviews. We had people sit down and have a look at the energy performance certificates, to annotate them, to see what they understand, what they find interesting, what they don't understand, to annotate it, and had discussions about it, and to tell us what they think about EPCs. We got answers from building users and owners, such as never seen it, I don't know what it is. And a lot of times we got answers such as it's an administrative necessity, it's a bureaucratic toy, just another paper, bureaucratic quibble. For example, in Slovenia, 3 out of 4 focus group participants who recently in the last 5 years bought the building, which means that technically they should come in contact with EPCs, they never took a closer look at an EPC. And even though this is a small sample, of course, as with anthropology and ethnography always is, because it's qualitative research, intuitively, I think we all know it does show some quality, this finding. And then obviously we also went back to the experts. You go on and off the field. We also asked, let's say, a very important question. How could we secure the wide base support for EPCs? Also, like now looking at all these different answers that we got. And for example, a public authority representative said, you issue a law and it becomes widely accepted. Or to answer the other way around, if we didn't have it written in the EPBD directive, we would never have had implemented this. And I think maybe this is a good starting point to look at why really it's important to go to talk to the people. When you zoom out, when you have these interactions, even though you have on the one side, you have the goals of the project, you have to sometimes stop and look out and ask yourself, according to the answers and the interactions you had in the field, whom or what do EPCs really serve? You know, once you get these kind of answers, experts or the people? Is it just a system thing, administrative necessity, or is it something that really should be used by the people? Is enforcement really the only way to implement the EPBD standards? And what are we hoping to achieve? So I think exactly these kind of questions that appear once you come back from the field is why people should be always in the picture. Now, of course, the lucky thing about our projects is that we have project proposals, we have everything written down, we know very well what we want to achieve. And in UCERT, for example, these were the findings. Now we're going to go more towards the findings. I'd say that Guillaume really put out a very interesting insight also in what we came out from our project. And now we'll have a more, let's say, general look into that as well. So firstly, going to the current state, then potentials for improvement, and going back to the key first step. So in terms of the current state, generally how the EPCs are today, on the one side, we have the theory, which is generally perceived positively, and as it has a lot of generous potential. So the EPCs have a generous potential. But in practice, current EPCs are expert biased, so hard to understand for general users, and seen as administrative necessity. And from our findings, we figured out that the perceived purpose and value of EPCs really depends on who you talk to and what they're supposed to be used for. So meaningfulness and usefulness really is the thing that defines the value of EPCs. At the current state, let's say access to XYZ, so either funding or being able to sell the building or buy it and so on, is the key driver for the uptake. And this is also the reason why currently they're largely seen as an administrative necessity. And currently, even though this is the idea, they're not a benchmark for quality housing, but we do want to get there. Policy implementation side, currently one of the biggest problems is the quality control, lack of quality control and enforcement. EPC issuers have been referred to as an issue a lot of times. So who is eligible to be an EPC issuer, their education and continuous education, cost versus quality of their work. And of course, the tensions between different stakeholders who are important for the implementation and maintenance of the scheme. On the other side, we also figured out that at least public authorities and experts working in the field are supportive of development, and that is very important for us also as the community of projects that are working on this topic. On the other side, we have the problem of people avoiding action. And now this can be thought very broadly speaking. On the one side, let's say people in the field using EPCs potentially, hopefully. And on the other side, also, let's say the process of implementation of changes in terms of EPC schemes. So on the one side, you have lack of knowledge and foresight, lack of understanding, let's say. And then you have lack of motivation, skepticism, lack of trust. And of course, aspects such as cost. So how much money will it take? How much time? How much energy or social culture currency? So it's very important to keep in mind that even though we're talking about stakeholders and users, these are all people. There are all relations between people, and you know, trust or who's my friend and who is not, a lot of time are very important in the process of implementation and so on. You also have the aspect of disruption of life and established processes. So obviously, every time you want to implement changes, let's say to the scheme, people will not necessarily be very happy about it. And of course, you have particular interest and hidden agendas, which is one of the reasons why this is so. But of course, we have the vision and we know what we want to achieve. So I'll hand it out now to Jure, who will say a bit more about this.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Jure Vetršek. I used to be an engineer. Then I did a transition. And now I try to communicate findings from our humanistic colleagues to developers. Here's a short scheme. I'll try to explain. Reports with detailed information are available on the USART website. The challenge is how to show these hundreds of pages of research now in a few minutes and to have some meaningful suggestions. It's always a challenge. Okay, try next slide. Okay. In the future, the EPCs should have, as we heard before, some meaningful value in our everyday life. So it won't be just some bureaucratic necessity that we have to do when we sell an apartment, we want to get public funding, but to have some interaction with it and to help us to improve our daily life. It needs to come to a bigger picture, which is digitalization of buildings is coming. We are facing a new era also stimulated by renovation wave and Green Deal and things in buildings like digital twins, before mentioned smart readiness indicators, and digitalization as a whole is coming. We need to understand how EPCs fit in here. Also mentioned, really important, is the user experience. This is connected with the design. Something is visual, so pictograms and easy to understand information people are used to. And also the content, the levels of complexity of the data presented needs to be separated. It's different if, let's say, someone who is designing building retrofit, what information he or she needs, or someone who is renting an apartment or living in an apartment needs. The data needs to be contextualized, meaning what does this CO2 means? This is connected also with the language and the terminology used. In the EPCs, in some countries, we have CO2 equivalents, we have primary energy, and terms like this, which are not clear even to the experts. But trying to be completely scientifically correct, we use such terms, but then this reflects in no practical value for the users. Quality of the service as a whole, with certification, also needs to be improved in many ways, not just calculation methodologies, but also soft parts such as how to interact with people, the way that EPC issuers interact with their customers, the communication skills, and so on. What we suggest that EPC could help is to make energy more intuitive. The challenge with the energy is, on the contrary, for example, to waste. When you know, okay, this is paper, I put it in this bin, I feel it, I understand this is glass. Energy, you cannot feel it directly. Okay, it's heat, it's some electricity, and so EPCs as a system could help to make energy more intuitive and consequently improve the use of buildings, or the way we use buildings, because we at IRI-UL believe that this is the largest untapped potential. All the informatization, digitalization, and new technologies are not enough if we don't use them wisely. Or even with the old buildings, we need to use them in the right way. This is connected with the purpose why we have buildings, to ensure us healthy and safe indoor environment, and of course well-being, comfort, and all these aspects which are the purpose of the building. It's not if you shut down everything, we save the most, but we don't have other aspects, which is now health and safety is becoming connected with these bioagents everywhere now. As mentioned, EPC need to offer several levels of complexity because we have different users. We could have a modular design based on the user profile. If I'm managing this building, if I'm renovating it, if I'm selling it, or if I'm just a user, so we would access the part of information we want. As mentioned, we should, as a system of EPCs, enhance or improve human building interaction. This is the way we use buildings and its systems. This could be done via systematic learning progression of users that is guided by the systems such as EPC. What could be one of the useful aspects is also to stimulate efficient collaboration and coordination between stakeholders, something similar as BEAM is trying to do. What is really a key for future success of new EPC scheme is strong public awareness and support. This was, at least in some countries, a failure in the past because the public support was non-existing, or it was even opposed because the government is again trying to impose something we have to pay for. So the positive promotion and publicity is the key. For this, we need continuous or long-term marketing strategies and, of course, funds allocated to this. This is something that doesn't happen fast. It needs to be planned years in advance. On the end, we have to ask ourselves, what is really the value, what is practical for me as sitting in an office, being at home, or what practical value it has in life and for whom. This is something we need to keep in mind when developing new schemes. Some features that we can suggest, the EPCs should enable adjustments to different levels of complexity. If you look at the type of EPC user, it's not the same if you are elderly woman living in a large house in the countryside, not able to warm your home enough. On the contrary, to a neighbor who lives there with his family and has a big pool, for example. So it's people have different knowledge, different needs, and also different interests, and of course expectations. So it needs to be linked to the type of building, not just the way it's built, the building physics, but also the purpose of use. It's not the same if you use some building for an office or for a library, just to oversimplify. But again, also the patterns of use. We can have the same number of people, the same age, but they have different habits and different patterns, how they interact with the building and the systems, because this is connected with habits and the culture that is connected to the group that lives there. We believe it's important based on our research is to show on the EPC what are the correlations between pieces of data. How are emissions of particulate matter connected to energy use? How my actions are connected with, let's say, energy performance, what investments in XY means on my comfort, etc., etc. what's been pointed out also that they should enable meaningful comparison to one building to another, and also to improve the way we use buildings. Again, human-building interaction. What additional features could be? EPC can be a starting point, as before mentioned, roadmap, not just for energy performance, but also for maintenance. This is already being tried with advices, but these advices that are currently shown on EPCs are considered to be too general, too generic, and they are not useful. They are not linked to the specific circumstances. So EPC can trigger the decision making. It can help to steer the renovation project, and also later as a reference point for assessing interventions. For this, we would need things that projects that will be shown later are dealing with, which is to suggest scenarios for different user types and in different contexts, and suggest viable specific measures, not just investment measures, but also the ways how we use buildings and its systems. And of course, transparent estimation of resources and impacts is the key. Now we go back to the start. We need to understand what are the limits of the EPC concept, because now it can go very wide. We need to converge it and say, okay, what are the boundary conditions? And we need to ask ourselves, how do we expect that this will turn out? Here are some people, other people who are dealing with EPCs professionally, and then there's a reality we try to understand a bit with our ethnographic research. One question is also, is the enforcement through a policy and new regulation really the only way? Is it possible to use some other, say, magic mechanisms to improve this? These are the questions that remain open. And yeah, here are the findings shown in the picture again, but here I will stop and we can start the discussion. So.
Jure, Domen, thank you very much for this extensive presentation. I think we are running a little bit behind of time, so what I will do is to move to the next session, so to the panel discussion with our invited speakers from our sister projects. So without any further ado, I would move to the first presentation, I guess. Maike, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see me now.
Yes.
Yes, okay. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in this webinar with all the sister projects. My name is Maike Venjakob. I'm from the Wuppertal Institute in Germany, and we are the coordinator of the QualDeEPC project. And QualDeEPC is short for High Quality Energy Performance Assessment and Certification in Europe, Accelerating Deep Energy Renovation. So our main objective is to enhance EPC assessment, certification, and the verification regarding the quality and the cross-EU convergence of EPC schemes, and also to regarding the link between EPCs and deep renovation. And we want to achieve this by intensive dialogue between all the stakeholders that are necessary and that are involved in all levels. And of course, we need and want to disseminate our findings. And in order to involve all stakeholders, we have set up national expert fora in all our partner countries. And with them, we had first discussions, and then we came up with 7 priorities we want to develop further in our project. And these priorities, you can see, are improving the recommendations for renovation provided on the EPCs towards deep energy renovation, Then we want to set up an online tool for comparing EPC recommendations to deep energy renovation recommendations. We want to create deep renovation network platforms. We want to have regular mandatory EPC assessor training. Then we want to increase the high user friendliness of the EPC. Then we need advertising guidelines for EPCs, and we need to improve the compliance with the mandatory use of EPCs in real estate advertisements. We came up with some more proposals on how to improve these 7 priorities. And then we had another round of discussions with our national expert forum. That was beginning of this year, and now we are in the phase of really implement and fine-tune how we can implement these. Especially we are starting to issue enhanced EPCs in our pilot buildings, and in this part also the building owners are involved, because we need feedback on how these enhanced EPCs are of better quality and more useful. So that is the current state of QualDeEPC. Thank you.
Thank you, Maike. By any means, at any time, please drop your questions. If you have any, we'll take them all after this, carousel of projects. So leave the stage to Lukas Kranzl from the X-tendo project now.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Simona, and thanks for inviting me to this webinar. It's really good to join forces in our activities. So I want to say a few words about the X-tendo project, which we at TU Wien are coordinating. In a similar way as for the other projects, we want to support public authorities to enhance EPCs and to properly implement, well manage and organize next generation EPCs. And actually we organized the work in the project along, how we call it, 10 features, which can be seen on this left-hand figure. So 5 indicators which could be improved or could increase the relevance of the EPCs regarding smart readiness, comfort, outdoor air pollution, real energy consumption, and district energy. And then 5 features which deal with the way how we make use of EPC data and how also the use of EPC data for the end users could be improved and enhanced. And these are the topic of EPC databases, building logbooks, enhanced recommendations, financing options, and one-stop shops. And so these 10 features are our guidelines. Along these, we develop new methods, and along these, we also carry out testing projects to validate these newly developed methods. In the beginning of the project, we carried out a survey in 5 countries, Poland, Portugal, Greece, Romania, and Denmark, with a sample size of in each country of more than 500 interviewees, and they covered both the homeowners, landlords, and tenants. And the intention was to understand the end users' perception and needs, expectations of next generation EPCs to, also guide our development of the 10 features. So that's it from my side. Thanks a lot. Happy to respond to questions.
Thanks, Lukas. And indeed, if you have questions for Lukas, just drop it on our box. We move to the ePANACEA project with Laura Muhr. Hi,
Yes.
Laura.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can see and hear me. Thank you also from my side that I can be here and represent the ePANACEA project, or the work we've been doing, especially with looking at end users of the EPC. So ePANACEA means Smart European Energy Performance Assessment and Certification. So we are developing a holistic methodology for the energy assessment and certification. And I think what makes ePANACEA special are maybe the 3 feedback loops we have incorporated in the project. And one of that is the dialogue with end users and other stakeholders of the EPC through thematic workshops, which we are leading, or this work we are leading at I-DYCE, where I'm working in Germany. Yeah, so that means we want to talk to, or we did already talk to end users of the EPC, that means tenants and owners of buildings, but also with other stakeholders like experts, for example, policymakers, to get a complete picture, because we think that other stakeholders influence how end users understand or perceive their EPC and how they behave regarding energy. So what we did as empirical research in this field is 63 stakeholder interviews and 6 user needs workshops in the 5 pilot countries of ePANACEA and in Germany, so in 6 countries in total. And just to give a very brief statement about the perceptions of the EPC, we found out is that it really ranges from the comment, it's just an obligatory document and completely standardized, to the only document mapping the as-built situation and a policy instrument for the energy transition in the building sector. So yes, I agree, it really depends on who you talk to, what people think and say. And mainly end users have a rather negative perception of the EPC and related to, legal obligatory document. So we found out that the EPC is, most of the times used for contractual actions and unfortunately not a decision-making ad yet. So one quotation I chose is from a mechanical engineer in Greece saying that prospective buyers of a building asked for the energy efficiency class without evaluating the actual meaning. So it's just a standard thing without evaluating the actual meaning. There are more upcoming participatory actions in ePANACEA, which are 2 other rounds of workshops with users of the EPC, and they are focused, the first one on the acceptance of the new developed EPC and the current EPC schemes, and a last round of workshops where then the developed EPC scheme will be finally assessed by participants. Yeah, so that's a short side or outlook of ePANACEA.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you a lot. We move then to the EPPC RECAST, Olivier Greslou.
Hello, nice to meet you, and thank you, Simona, for having invited me and the EPC RECAST project to take part to this meeting with sister projects. Very interesting to join forces. So I will explain the main rationale behind the project, and also you will see that there are several key actions that are closely related to the user-centric approach and the need of end users in this project. So the key main objective of the project is to develop a new toolbox, digital and technical toolbox to assess building energy performance and retrofit needs and prepare the next generation of EPCs like all sister projects, of course, supporting policy decision-making in the EU. So the first key point is that we want to support the work of EPC assessors. So we mainly focus first on their daily work to produce an EPC, to collect data on site and to launch energy performance calculations, then to provide an EPC to the owners. And for supporting this and improve the reliability and quality of EPCs, we use a set of tools and methods, which you do not have all of them here on the screen, but just to give you a few examples. We have innovative on-site data collection methods, for instance, for the geometry of the building, the use of measured data from smart meters and public databases of EPCs to conduct also quality check, develop quality check procedures and model calibration, so to improve the reliability. And this will lead us to develop a full prototype of a cloud system toolbox for the assessors. While this is a technical side of the project, we are co-designing, in fact, the whole assessment process and the outputs, which means the indicators and renovation recommendations that you see on the certificates in the end, with different groups of stakeholders and especially end users, which are owners and assessors. And for doing so, we are using an interactive and iterative user-centered design approach throughout the project, because we have different phases in which we start developing the technical approach, then sharing, of course, our first ideas and first organization with the stakeholders, and then readjusting, and with this iterative process, improving the whole scheme. Another topic that is closely related to this, to the discussion we have today, is that we want to improve renovation recommendations in EPCs, and for doing so, we are creating links with renovation roadmaps. We have studied them in previous projects, for instance, like the Aldrin project, so that then you could have more detailed and tailored recommendations for owners, and so that the EPC could be used to trigger renovations and not only inform people about the current state of the building. And also a link that is important is to use as best as we can the digital logbooks, which are being developed in different European countries now, to link input and output information from EPCs with these logbooks, so that the owners of the buildings have a comprehensive view and information about the performance and renovation potential of their buildings. And so, in parallel with this co-design approach with the user-centered approach, we are also collecting recommendations continuously through the project with public authorities, national energy agencies, and industrial stakeholders, with two groups, one which is a policy advisory board, and the other one which is a stakeholders mirror group, with industry representatives, EPC assessor organizations, etc. So with bisemestrial, biannual meetings with these groups, but also more bilateral discussions with small groups of stakeholders throughout the overall project. And maybe one last point that is less directly related to the user-centric approach we are discussing today, but still it's important that we enhance the comparability of EPC assessment between partner countries. And so this is why we are implementing links with the SENS standards, especially under mandate M480, so that then it improves the comparability of the assessment process and the information that is provided in the EPC. And this is what I wanted to say about the project, and then of course we will react during the questions and answers session.
Thanks, Olivier. And indeed, if you have any questions or remark for the EPBC RECAST project or any of the previous one, just drop a question and we'll take it after. We'll move then to the D2EPC project with, let me see if I can pronounce your name. Panagiota Chatzipanagiotidou.
Well, thank you. Nice try. Oh, it's a quite difficult name. My name is Panagiota Chatzipanagiotidou. I'm working for the Center of Research and Technology HELAS, who is the coordinator of the D2EPC project. And I will provide a short overview of our scope and objectives. So D2EPC stands for Next Generation Dynamic Digital EPCs for Enhanced Quality and User Awareness. The project aims to introduce and establish the concept of Next Generation Dynamic Energy Performance Certificates that are issued on a regular basis, and to set the grounds for any EU-wide deployment. Our project wishes to enhance the assessment with the inclusion of new indicators that cover aspects like the energy, the smart readiness, sustainability, human comfort, and financial aspects of the building, of new and existing buildings. And this will facilitate the understanding of buildings and will present a more comprehensive overview of the building's actual energy performance. Our EPCs are BIM-based, so the project aims to introduce BIM-based digital twins that utilize real-time data coming from sensors and smart meters and connected devices for the assessment of the building's performance. The project includes improved AI-driven assessment recommendations for energy efficiency and optimal comfort. It actually includes tools that will enable customized, cost-effective recommendations that take also into account occupants' needs and user habits. And this way it can incite renovation plans and foster energy-saving consciousness because users can better understand how their behavior impacts on the performance, the energy performance of the building, and they can better understand the benefits of recommendation and suggestions provided. And as a last point, the project also aims to integrate geolocation and polluter-based practices into the EPC rationale and make EPCs registries into policy feeding mechanisms. We wish to visualize EPCs and relevant information in a GIS environment so the users can perform and authorities can perform queries and map and monitor their building stock and examine the energy demand of particular areas, and this can be very useful for policy planning and investment strategies. And the polluter-based practice is aimed as a motivational scheme for the users to award users in case of their building having a behavior that exceeds the EPC expectations. That could come as tax reliefs, for example. So this summarizes a bit the project scope. D2EPC started last September 2020, so we are in our first phase. What we also pointed out through our analysis for defining the challenges and the expectation for next generation EPCs is indeed the perception of the users, and we need to put some effort here and really make EPCs user-friendly and informative tool. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you very much. So we are moving towards our last, but not least for importance, presentation from the E-DYCE project. So we have Michal Pomianowski with us.
Yes, thank you, Simona. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's my pleasure to present E-DYCE project, which stands for Energy Flexible Dynamic Building Certification. We just passed the 6 months of the operation of the project, so it's still in the early phase. I would like to start my presentation just by saying that the concept that we propose is a parallel and voluntary concept that is not in any how contradicting or competing with the current EPC system. The aim of the project is motivated by gaining more reliability and usability of the results that would come from the EPC certification that would be produced in the dynamic way. The aim of the project is to investigate the possibility to move the current steady state EPC methodology to the dynamic environment. And this regards the dynamic modeling of the buildings, and as well as supplementing monitoring of the building energy performance and indoor environment. As a result, EPC outcome would become not a single static value, a picture of the building, but something what would be more like a function, which is result that changes over the time with the building, with building users, and is also normalized with respect to changing boundary condition. This, of course, creates new possibilities, but as well some challenges. One of the challenges is, of course, related to the entire methodology that would move this approach from steady state calculations to dynamic calculations and to dynamic approach. In here, we would work with several activities such as dynamic technologies in dynamic modeling environment, simplification of the models, working with input and outputs with more automatized manner. We believe that the dynamic modeling has to be as detailed as required, but at the same time as simple as necessary. It's easy to say, it's more difficult to do. Yes, as the models become more and our approach becomes more dynamic, the list of the possible produced outputs becomes longer. And as we know from the experience, more not necessarily means better. The produced key performance indicators that we define in our project have to be carefully and clearly addressed to the audience, and at the same time at the right time. We expect to differentiate the information that will be passed to different end users, and we identify different end users such as tenant, probably professional building owners, and building managers. One of the objectives of the project is to as well propose optimization of the building, exploiting its free running potential, and having the possibility when working with dynamic models. And by free running potential, we define a deactivation of mechanical heating and cooling, and rating the building based on this deactivation of these mechanical systems. In case of buildings having no mechanical heating or cooling, because this is also possible, the calculations would be based on recalculating the discomfort to a fixed energy use. In this case, we would focus on mitigating the risk of installation of mechanical systems. The last point in my presentation, I would focus on the upcoming event, which is related to the demonstration buildings that we have in our project. We have number of demonstration buildings to represent our methodology, and we are approaching to a stage where we will equip the buildings with necessary equipment. And in order to do that, we will have to interfere. We will have to enter the buildings with the tenants and install some hardware in the buildings. This gives us the possibility and opportunity to have interviews with tenants and to check their acceptance of installation of such devices, if there are any barriers from their side, and also to share and inform them so that we and them have a good understanding what is the purpose of the project, so what we are going to do. Yes, with this, I would like to close my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michal. And indeed, I think you just touched upon one of the key topic that we're trying to address with our sister project, which is indeed the performance gap that we are seeing between the design energy performance and the actual one, with the thousand of reasons and factors that are creating this performance gap. Of course, the behavior of the actual behavior of the building components, so the hardware solution and the building fabric itself, that might not perform as designed, so also as certified at one certain time being of the building, but of course also the occupant's behavior. So the different approaches we can better interpret the building performance, being, for instance, dynamic energy simulations and operational rating versus asset rating is indeed one of the key elements. And of course, if any of the panelists have some reflection about this, I would like to welcome your comments. We have a direct question, the only direct question. I will start with this one, then I will maybe jump to others, to Guillaume from Didier. He asked if you have any feedback from your members on the split incentive barrier, owner versus tenant, and how could the EPC be redesigned to overcome this barrier?
Thanks for the question, Didier. Actually, split incentives are a key topic that BEUC intends to tackle, but we have more an approach on financing and assessment, a general assessment of the situation. EPCs can be useful for sure. They are indeed listed in the existing directive as it is written for now, even before the revision. But then the question is the implementation. You need local authorities to step in, and impartial third parties to step in and provide support and advice on both sides. That's where you can have the EPC actually useful, because it will be written for both tenants and landlords as a bridging tool.
Thanks, Guillaume. We hope the question was addressed. I know that Jure and Domen have some sort of icebreaker questions, so they would like to pose to the panelists.
Yes, okay. We heard a lot of ideas, concepts, different projects are developing that are very relevant, but we still have some questions that are, for example, are the EPCs, should they be only for the users? We talked for the experts. We talked about a lot about involving users in the design and so on, but reality is that up to now we did not include them so much. So my question would be how to set the limits to the EPCs. Where do EPCs end and when do other concepts start, like digital twins, SRIs, building renovation logbook, and we heard about energy audits and so on. So how to limit it, the EPCs?
Any response? Maybe Laura, because I see you there.
Okay, thanks. That is also feedback I often got from experts, that EPCs should definitely be limited. For example, end users really have the need to know their real energy consumption. But what we learn from experts is that this doesn't fit to the EPC, because it wouldn't allow to compare buildings with each other, because then we would compare rather the user behavior instead of the buildings. So we got the recommendation to separate the EPC scheme from a tool to provide feedback about real energy consumption, and not only to separate that, but also to not add too much more additional information to the EPC, like, for example, about life cycle assessment, yeah, so not to overwhelm end users even more, because it is already very complex and even blown up in some countries. Yeah, but where the exact limit is, that definitely needs to be discussed and be defined. Maybe somebody has an idea about that already.
So not to overwhelm the users. So the concept of not tearing them up and providing just the right information, of course. But again, how to do this? How to set up the limits and the boundaries of the information? Any other ideas?
I mean, I have an idea in this respect, also taking up what Laura said. It was also a discussion within X-tendo to which extent the EPCs, or actually what is the primary objective of an EPC? No? Should it give guidance in the moment when there is a real estate transaction? Should this be the main starting point, or should it be rather, as Laura you also said, it could also be, yeah, giving more advice regarding renovation activities, even regarding energy-related behavior, and here also this whole discussion about factoring in user behavior into energy demand calculation comes into play. And at least for some functionalities, I perfectly agree with you, Laura, that it would be good to limit the scope of EPCs to, for example, to this case of real estate transaction, and use other instruments like billing passports, logbooks, and so on for other intentions and other objectives to reach. So that's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's really a final conclusion, but it's from the project, but it's my, these are my ideas.
Mm-hmm. So maybe one of the conclusions from this debate is that there is no actual limit, but maybe we should adopt an approach that fits the purpose. So for instance, for the different users having different elements of the energy performance certificates, for instance, logbook for one type of stakeholder and SRI's assessment for others. So maybe that could be the limit. Any other ideas or way to provoke our discussion?
May I jump in on the EPC RECAST side? I think one first, it's really much related to what you just said, but the first key point is to try to think about what is the minimum but sufficient set of information you would like to provide to the building owner about the energy performance and renovation needs of its buildings, which is not directly related to the EPC in itself, but just to the information that suffices to the owner. So there is one first topic here to be looked at and discussed. And then this leads us, I think, to your remark about Lukas, about the link with logbooks and passports, because today we have a lot of initiatives in different European countries about building passports and logbooks. There is still no real market application of these tools. The EPC is maybe something that you provide to the user at a given point in time. It's a picture of the performance of the building at a given moment, while the passport, the logbook, is a more dynamic tool that you could update through time. So this is maybe where you could think about the whole package, about the EPC and the passport, about maybe getting some EPCs every 5 or 10 years, and then linking the information in the EPC with these dynamic tools so that you have the overall package for the owner. So once again, we should think about the overall package, information and set of tools to be used.
Thanks, Olivier. Unfortunately, we arrive at the end of our time for today. Of course, this is not everything we could say about energy performance certificates, but again, this was a way to provoke some ideas. We would like to share this, this knowledge The content of today's working session has been recorded, will be broadcasted, and of course, by any means, if you have questions or remarks for the project coordinators of the sister projects, don't hesitate to contact them directly. Don't hesitate to contact us from the UCERT team. And once again, I would like to thank Domen and Jure for the co-chairing of this event, and Andrei Litiu from Riva for the technical support. And again, thanks to all the panelists and the people who attended today. I wish you a beautiful continuation of your day, and we will stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you for this meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.